OK, we have just 5 days to go until deadline day, and as you can see, we're joined by the football finance expert, Esteve Calzada, to assess the spending so far in this January transfer window. Esteve, thank you so much for joining us. You've worked for both Barcelona and Manchester City before now. First of all, I mean, we've got such an open title race this season here in England. Did you expect a team like Manchester City and their current rivals perhaps to be busier in this window?
Not necessarily. The winter transfer window is normally an opportunity for lower-sized teams to revert the situation in the league, and normally the top teams try to do the homework by the summer. Also, we face now a situation in which, given the improvement of football finances, even if some of these top teams have the money to go and buy players, the selling clubs are not necessarily in such a bad need to sell. So even if there's money around, so far we still haven't seen huge activity.
Just on that, the improvement of football finances, do you mean the amount of money that they have or the way that they manage the finance that they have, or both, in fact?
Yeah, it's a combination of factors, but obviously we are ahead of the biggest ever TV rights deal for English clubs. So there's money there for teams to buy players, but also there's money there for teams to retain players, offer better salaries to the players, so that they are not in a bad need to sell, just like we saw in the past.
Premier League teams have continued to outspend the other top leagues in Europe. Teams have spent nearly as much as last year. Do you expect this to be a record January window?
Not really a record, because 3 or 4 seasons ago, just because we saw a couple of extraordinary transfers,
Carroll,
exactly. Yeah. So that's very difficult to beat. The biggest spending now is around 10-12 million pounds. So unless there's like huge and extraordinary transfer in the days to come, I would not expect. We would expect to do more than last year, but not really a record high.
Here's another little stat. Actually, 7 of Europe's top 10 signings are by Premier League clubs, and 4 of those have been made by promoted teams this season. Now, would you consider those panic buys, or maybe are they worth the risk to try and secure safety, especially with that big TV deal, as you mentioned, next season?
Maybe not necessarily panic, but obviously teams that need to revert a sporting situation, normally smaller teams, but still teams that can afford big spending, which you could not expect in other leagues. Teams facing relegation or fighting for relegation, being able to spend 10, 12, 15 million pounds is something that is difficult to understand from other leagues' perspectives.
And last January, a massive spike in the number of signings over the top 5 European leagues. Esteve, why was that? And can we expect that to be beaten this window?
I don't think it will be beaten, just because even the Premier League may do as well as much as last year. We don't see the same pattern in the other leagues. And then again, the winter transfer window normally comes with extraordinary situations, just because maybe a team that has decided to buy a player in the summer decides to advance the investment and do it in January, or just because there's been an important injury. So normally it's the smaller teams that do activity here, and it's not like there's a specific parameters or a pattern that is replicated year after year.
And just finally, in terms of not just how much is spent and how many signings are made, what are the other sort of differences, key differences between the Premier League and the other European leagues? How are we different? Is it culturally different? Is it an approach that's different?
It's a combination of factors. Obviously, there's a very wealthy situation in the game ahead of other leagues, even if other leagues are getting better. And probably one big difference also would be the fact that there is an obligation to have a certain number of players that are English players in the squad. That means that the local market, the domestic market, becomes more inflated. And if you look at the numbers that we've seen so far, you see Shelby, you see Townsend, so agreements that are very expensive agreements, just because we're talking about English players, and they are highly demanded.
Fantastic. Esteve, great to speak to you as always. Thank you very much indeed for coming in. And as you know, especially watching at home, you've seen deadline day time and time again. It should be a busy last few days of deals. You can get an update on all the day's transfer activity. Transfer Centre on air tonight, 7:15 p.m. right here on Sky Sports News HQ.